Well, I'm not surprised.
Welcome to the man cave.
Hey, everyone. So, unless you're not a fan or you just don't care, Paramount, 3 days ago, today is March 26th, 3 days ago, canceled Star Trek Starfleet Academy and made an announcement about it. It's kind of not accurate, but I mean, technically it is. They said they canceled it after 2 seasons, and that's only because they filmed both seasons back to back. The first season just completed airing a couple weeks ago, and they got this news. And the internet has responded. And for the most part, it's been pretty much dancing on the grave of this show. Now, before I go any further, I don't want to give a false impression or anything. I hated this show. I thought it was terrible. I genuinely feel like each episode was worse than the last. But that being said, um, this reaction is just pretty overwhelming. I mean, most of the fan base websites that are covering this have been very adamant on and animated about their disregard for this show, just how much they hated it. And I've only seen one website. It's I think it's called Trek Culture, who has been pretty upset about the cancellation of the show. They have been supporters and fans of the show throughout the series, and so understandably, they're not happy about it. But for the most part, the fan sites have been pretty vocal in their appreciation of this show getting canceled and how much they didn't like it. Now, I'm not going to that extreme. I feel like, and I feel like a lot of people understand this, that to be successful on the internet, you got to be really like bombastic and flamboyant. Everything is it's really hitting or fire or whatever. Everything is just a big deal. This show is no exception. People who liked it just really liked it. Oh my God, everything is great. It's the best Star Trek ever. People who hate it, really hated it. And I did not like this show. I thought it kind of missed the mark of what Star Trek is and what the story had been up to this point. And I feel like they were going for something. And I really feel like what they were going for, it wasn't inappropriate or wrong or anything. It just didn't fit in the Star Trek universe or genre, whatever. So I'm looking at some information about it. So they canceled it after 2 seasons. Like I said, they filmed both seasons simultaneously. Second season have not been released yet, so that's not really accurate. But, early reporting is that the second season is going to be sometime in 27. So we'll have to wait to see that. I don't think that'll be enough, especially if they wait that long to salvage the show or anything. I mean, who knows, anything's happened, but it seems like, just not going to happen. What's interesting is that for the first time in 10 years, there won't be any Star Trek coming out. There's 2 more seasons of Star Trek Strange New Worlds that's been not yet aired. I guess they're filming both of them simultaneously, just like they did with Starfleet Academy. I think that's a cost-saving measure or something. But after that, there'll be nothing new. There's been a lot of rumblings about a movie of all kind of different strikes, but I followed that under Trust Me Bro news network. I mean, we really don't know until Paramount says anything. There's this whole merger with Sundance that's been in the news lately, and the real fear that more conservative minds will take over Star Trek. So we don't know what the future of Star Trek looks like just yet. But about the show itself, and I have said this, and I when I did my season review, I said that this, and I'm reading here from a little summary, is that the show is polarizing, which it was. It says 87% on Rotten Tomatoes, but the fans gave it a 51%. And I don't know if that's telling or not. It's I'll get to that in a second. But it never broke the Nelson's weekly top 10 streaming rankings. And I've heard some fans say, "Oh, what difference does that make?" It kind of makes a difference. It's a different world than traditional television where most stuff is coming through streaming. So, you want to see whose eyeballs are on your streaming services, because that's where you're going to put your money. All streaming services are starting to lean more into this tier method of there's advertising, and that might be a way for them to gauge too. But, overall, there seem to be more focus on, if it's top 10, if people are subscribing to Paramount Plus in this case because of Star Trek, Starfleet Academy, doesn't look like it. There's a lot of people saying it's praising this younger cast and coming of age themes, while detractors said it was being too woke. And I've made my feelings about wokeness well known. It's like, what is woke? Just seems like woke is anything I don't like. But for me, and I'll say it again, it's either non-white, non-straight, non-male. If you hit any of those, all of those, you're woke. But no one's really saying what woke is. But I do think overall, if we use the woke as we know it, that pretty much probably was the death blow. And so that being said, I really feel like this show had potential. I think even with this woke cast, I think it could have been something. And I say that because the characters in themselves weren't bad. I feel like, and I say this with little shame because you can see behind me, I am an author, and all these videos are trying to get you to look at my stuff and check out my Urban Night series, which has nothing to do with Star Trek, but the story is a story. And I think if it had better stories, this show was really character driven. And this was a thing where it was like, I like this person, and I like Caleb, I like Jaden, I like Sam. And that would make you want to keep tuning into the series, even though it was getting further and further away from what Star Trek was. I said it during my review of the season. It was getting less, not military, but the military-ish world that Star Trek lived in. The academy definitely wasn't an academy. It was, I don't know what you would call it. It was a school. And I think that would have been cool. But to try to force this round peg in a square hole, it just wasn't happening. I feel like they could have took these characters, even with their sexual identities, their quirkiness and all that kind of stuff, and put them into a framework that was more Star Trek, instead of being so focused on the individual's goals and desires and wants and everything, and focus it more on, the betterment of Starfleet, the betterment of, the Federation or whatever. I think that would have went over with fans a little bit more. But as it were, we were really invested in their particular desires and wants, and we never really got a sense of mission. At least for me, it was almost like the purpose of Star Trek was to just give these people a platform to be their best selves. Not that they were necessarily the best, just a place for them to be the best. And I felt that was the problem. There was never a sense of a tie to Starfleet as something they were growing to. They were already perfect. Caleb in particular, he was a Gary Sue. He could do everything. They were hacking things left and right. There was no sense of framework or limitations to them. They could just do whatever they wanted to. And I think a lot of that is popular with a younger demographic because they feel empowered through these characters. I mentioned before that Star Trek historically, classic Trek before 2009, was very much based on these are characters who we aspire to be like, to be more like Captain Kirk, to be more like Janeway, all that kind of stuff. While this newer bunch is, I want to hang out with them because they are me. I think that was a hard line that just wasn't acceptable to a lot of old school fans. And the numbers bear out. It never reached any kind of heights. It wasn't popular. The people who liked it, but I don't think one of the things about this kind of approach and what's going on with these kind of shows is that there is a certain fan base who look at the Star Trek, the Marvel universe, the DC universe, whatever it is, Star Wars, and they say, we want that. We want that level of fame. We want that level of attention, but we want it to exist in our world, in our point of view, and what we think is valuable. And that's not what the fan base wants. I say this because I'm looking at two Marvel properties that's not even out yet, and the fan base is just excited, and it's Spider-Man in the next season of Daredevil. And the buzz has already started. People are excited by this. People are always excited about Spider-Man. That's a whole different conversation. But these are traditionally white heroes. And I don't think it's the issue of that. I don't think you can say it's because they're white. But what it is that when you have a show, when you get away from the straight white male, you get to this. Everyone else has got to be an idiot. So if you have a gay character or a female character, all the males are idiots, and that immediately turns off all the males. If you look at uh, the latest iteration of Charlie's Angels. That was very poignant. All the men were dummies and the women were infallible, and nobody wants to see that. There's even a batch of female fans that's like, "I don't want my hero to be infallible. I want them to struggle and grow and all that kind of stuff." And for some reason, Hollywood thinks that you can't show any flaws, you can't show any weaknesses. That's just not true. People aren't interested in it, and I don't think Starfleet Academy got the memo on that. They thought that Caleb's got to be perfect. Everyone's got to be flawless, and anything that any challenges they have overcome in the course of an episode. I think that more than anything killed this show. I really do believe that I or any writer with that kind of mindset could take these exact same characters and make a good show. I would make Kapanaki wear shoes. I would do a lot of things differently as far as the way they approach things, but it would be the same characters. I don't think the issue was that Jaden was gay. I think the issue was is that not only was he gay, but he rejected his entire culture of being a warrior. Why couldn't he be a gay warrior? I mean, I think that would have been far more interesting than him walking around in a dress, and that came out of nowhere. I think that the thing about Sam that really didn't make any sense. Why would a hologram be 17 years old, and not only 17 years old, but like just instantly 17 years old? Now the way they handled that with her going as conveniently time dilated universe so that the doctor could raise her up. And I'm sorry if you haven't seen it, I'm making an assumption you've seen it or at least familiar with it, that they were able to grow her up real quick. That was interesting. It actually caused a conflict between her and Genesis, which was actually interesting, but everything else but the show was just really, really bad. And I think that you just can't have characters. You got to have good stories. And the internet and the world has spoken. So, what's going to happen now? I mean, this is dark times for Star Trek, and I don't wish this on anybody. And this is back to my initial reaction of people just being so giddy and laughing and just enjoying the failure somehow. I mean, somebody far beyond, what we see on the screen worked hard for this. The people, this is their livelihood. And now somebody is unemployed because, this show got canceled or they're not going to have the same level of employment. And that's not good. And to be just giddy and gleeful because something you didn't like, it's affecting people in real time. I think that's kind of childish. I don't respect or acknowledge some of these people who are on the internet, yelling woke at the top of their lungs every time they get because they don't like something. I mean, if you don't like it, turn the channel. We don't have to go around destroying everything. But again, as I started, if it's not dramatic, you can't be on the internet. I just don't respect that. I'm sorry that it didn't turn out to be the way it could have been. I wish that this show could have found a market and went somewhere else. I don't think it was Star Trek. And when I say that, I mean it's not what Star Trek has presented itself to be over the decades. It's Star Trek because Paramount owns the IP and they say it's Star Trek, but it's just sad that they couldn't bring something to the fans that they enjoy. Now, by the same token, it's sad that they couldn't bring a product like this to that fan base that enjoyed it. And some of it is going to be a matter of it's going to be a smaller fan base. Maybe you won't get the same quality of show because your demographic is not as big as you would like it to be or think it should be. Because everybody doesn't like this kind of storyline, Melrose Place and that kind of thing. No one in the sci-fi community wants that. They could have taken these characters and did something, but they didn't. So now it looks like it's not going to be in Star Trek for a while. Um, and I'm sad about that. I'm not as big into Star Trek as I used to be. I'm not big into television as I used to be. I'm sad when people can't express themselves creatively and do things and make new things, even if I don't like it. I wish there was a place for Star Trek, Starfleet Academy, just not here. Maybe it could be Space School or something, and then they can do those things and be that place. But I really don't think even in that case it will survive. I really think this is a case of a small minority forcing their viewpoints on a fan base and telling them you should like this, and they don't. That's unfortunate. I wish that people could express themselves, but the people have spoken and nobody really likes this. I know I didn't like it. I really felt like each episode was worse than the last. I'll probably watch season 2 just to see how they handle this and close it out. But yeah, I'm not gonna cry that Starfleet Academy is gone. I am gonna cry that these people are out of work. They aren't able to express themselves. I wish there was another venue for them to express themselves. And maybe there is. Maybe I'm just not aware of that because it's not my world. But what do you guys think? I know there's a lot of people have very strong emotions about whatever their particular sci-fi thing is, and if that's how you feel, that's how you feel. But what do you guys think? Do you think that it deserved another chance, or it's just It had its run. Are you upset that it's canceled, or are you dancing on its grave like a lot of these people on the internet are? Comment below.